Hi everyone! Today we're going to share some strategies for teachers to kickstart their relationships with students and maintain positive relationships throughout the year. So let's get started. I'm Em.
And I'm JJ, and we work here at Maths Pathway to help schools teach maths more effectively.
One of our core beliefs here at Maths Pathway is the importance of the relationship between teacher and students, so it's something we really want to focus on with you today.
The first thing we're going to share with you is an icebreaker and what makes it effective.
We're also going to give you some strategies to be able to learn your students' names really quickly.
And finally, we're going to talk about maintaining positive relationships with your students throughout the year. Moving to icebreakers. Icebreakers.
So remember, some of the reasons that we use icebreakers in our class are to facilitate more familiarity between our students. We also want to be encouraging them to interact a little bit more naturally and comfortably with one another. And it also helps us to build that positive classroom culture right from day one.
And some things to look out for when selecting icebreakers and making sure that the questions you're asking are not too trivial. You also want to make sure that there's minimal social risk for the students so that everybody can participate. And finally, you want to make sure that they're not just about remembering the students' names. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on.
That's it. So here's an example that we really love.
This or that.
This is an activity I really liked using as a teacher, not just as an icebreaker, but even as an energizer when I had 5 minutes that I wanted to fill. You start by asking the whole class a question that has two distinct answers. So JJ, which do you think makes a better pet? Cats or dogs?
Definitely dogs.
Okay, so one side of my classroom is going to represent the answer cats, the other side of the room is going to represent the answer dogs. And all I want my students to do is to move to their side of the room and share a little bit about why they chose that answer. How easy is that?
And some of the best things about this activity is that it doesn't involve any setup. You can just hit the ground running with it whenever you have a spare 5 minutes. It also gets the kids up and moving around the classroom, which really encourages the interaction between your students. And finally, you can easily adapt the questions to suit the needs of the students in your class.
That's right. You can even encourage a little bit of light-hearted debate, get the cat people arguing against the dog people. It's also going to build confidence talking in front of their peers. And it's also a really nice way that you've got that safety in numbers element as well. So students know that their opinion is shared by some of their classmates. They're not out there on their own.
And one thing to make sure of is that all the questions are relatable to your students, so everybody has the opportunity to access the activity.
That's right. We also want to avoid any types of questions that might sort students into stereotypes. So it's better to avoid things like, would you rather play sport or read a book? The idea is to get students to find unexpected common ground with each other.
And building on that, we really want to make sure that all students have an opportunity to share their answers, whether that be with just their side if that's what they're comfortable with, or whether that be with the entire class.
And all of this is included in the resource, which is available for you in the description.
And now we're going to move on to strategies for remembering your students' names.
Learning students' names.
We want to make sure that remembering your students' names is an early focus and not just something that you hope will happen organically.
That's right, and we know it's so important because it proves to your students that you know who they are and that they matter to you. It's also going to build their trust in you as a teacher, and in terms of your students knowing each other's names, it's going to establish more of a sense of community in your classroom, as well as students showing more empathy and openness towards each other.
Absolutely, and we know there are a lot of games out there to help with remembering students' names, but we want to arm you with a strategy that will help you throughout the entire year. And we've got a really good one called the Name Store.
The Name Store. So the idea for this strategy is to set up a store of whole class rewards that are worth a different amount of points. Every time you forget a student's name, they're going to earn points towards cashing in one of those whole class rewards. And you might even like to include a few extra rules, like if you've asked students for a clue, such as the first initial of their name, and you still get it wrong, they might actually earn double points. And once again, we're going to have the full details of this available for you in the resource.
And some of the best things about this activity, it means that forgetting a student's name no longer has such negative connotations. It also really builds a sense of classroom community because it's the students against the teacher, and who doesn't love that? And it also really encourages you as the teacher to remember your students' names quickly.
So there's a number of other tips that you can use in conjunction with this strategy to help you learn those students' names really quickly. One of the easiest things you can do is to just have students label every piece of equipment that they bring to your class so that you've got a little bit of a cheat sheet on the desk in front of you. The other thing you can do is to have a rule where students are actually enforced to use each other's names every time they speak to each other in your class. And that then it puts the onus on them as well as you. The other thing that you can do is to use the roll call to your advantage. So instead of just skipping from name to name, perhaps have a question that students need to answer, like what they had for lunch that day. It gives you a few extra seconds to just memorise that student's name.
And building on that, you want to make sure that when you are memorising the student's name, you're memorising their preferred name. For example, my name is Jennifer or JJ. Please don't call me Jenny, I really don't like it. And the last thing to make sure of is that you're pronouncing the student's name correctly from the outset.
So now that we've looked at some ways to build positive relationships in your classes, we're going to look at how we can maintain them throughout the year.
Maintaining student relationships. Maintaining relationships over time are really essential to developing autonomy in your students, building a growth mindset, and also maintaining motivation throughout the entire year.
And we know you've already got your own strategies that you use to maintain relationships. We wanted to share some with you that have come to us from our teacher community. One of those is to set really clear expectations at the start of the year and make sure these remain firm. Don't shift the goalposts.
And remember that relationships are give and take, so when a student shares something about themselves, make sure you share a little bit about yourself as well.
And there are opportunities to do this outside of the classroom, perhaps in the canteen line buying a sausage roll, or even if you run into a student at the footy on the weekend. It's a great opportunity for you to have a little bit of a chat with them.
And building on that, really make sure that you're checking in with your students throughout the entire year and not just once at the start.
You should also make sure you use the right praise for each of the students in your class, whether that's a quiet word as they're walking out the door, whether it's publicly in front of their peers, or even a phone call home to parents.
And the reason all of these work so well is that it's really building on the trust that you have with your students, and it's also reminding them that you really do know and care about each one of your students.
So now you have 3 great tools to help you build positive relationships in your classroom. You can start with really effective icebreakers that are going to tell you a little bit about your students, but not require them to take any awkward social risks.
And remember, we spoke about really effective strategies that you can use in the classroom to remember your students' names, and also will help you to cultivate a really positive classroom culture.
You've also got some great tips for maintaining these relationships throughout the year and making sure that it stays a focal point of your teaching.
And the best part about all of these strategies and activities is that they require minimal resources, but are still highly effective.
That's right, and if you think we've missed anything really great, we'd love to hear from you, so please share with us. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to check out our playlist with other classroom activities. I'm Em.
I'm JJ.
Thanks for tuning in.